Southampton was an important medieval trading town. Its various docks linked the south of England to the rest of Europe and the New World and formed the source of the town's wealth. 2 kilometers of stone walls encircled Southampton, constructed after a disastrous French raid on the town in 1338, with towers protecting both the landward side and facing out over Southampton Water. 8 gates gave access to the town. The walls remained important. Only 5 years before, the French had attacked the Venetian trade ships in Southampton's harbour. By the turn of the 16th century, Southampton was a crowded town, and its population had begun to spill out beyond its walls along the approach roads, creating new suburbs. We know a lot about the citizens of Southampton at this time, as a result of the survival of a document that recorded which landowners were responsible for maintaining particular stretches of the walls. The southeast corner of the town overlooked the salt marshes that stretched along the coastline. The Franciscan friary dominated the district with its own gatehouse and bridge crossing the town's ditches. God's House Hospital, which provided shelter for travellers following the Old Way pilgrimage route to Canterbury, occupied much of the rest of the southeast corner. The chapel of St. Julian served the local community. The southern edge of the city was protected by God's House Tower, a powerful artillery complex built in the early 15th century, and the fortified Watergate, which overlooked the southern dock. A mill stood just outside the walls beneath the tower, fed by tides that flowed beneath it into the town's ditches. English Street, now called High Street, ran across the length of the town, from Bargate in the north to Watergate in the south. A few years later, the antiquarian John Leland described this as one of the fairest streets that is in any town of all England. It held 3 of Southampton's churches, All Saints, Lawrence's and Holy Rue. Southampton's inhabitants kept many animals within the walls, sharing the space with pigs, horses, chickens and cows. French Street and Bull Street, now called Bugle Street, ran parallel to English Street, but closer to the docks and Southampton's trade. Together they housed the grand dwellings of some of Southampton's richest burgesses, as well as the wealthy Italian merchants who resided in the town, such as Bull Hall and West Hall. They also held many of the civic institutions that managed trade, including the wool and tin houses. Most of the merchants' houses doubled as shops, with cellars beneath them, designed to store their products at the ideal temperature. French Street and Bull Street met at St. Michael's Church, the most prestigious church in the town, adjacent to St. Michael's Square, with a fish market and cloth hall, which rested on a tall wooden platform, formed a commercial hub. Southampton Castle dominated the northwest corner, where the stone keep on its 11th century motte and the outer bailey walls formed part of the protective circuit of the town. The royal castle had its own quay and was used to store wine and other luxury imports for the crown. Overlooked by the castle, the northeast corner of Southampton held some of the poorest members of the community, clustered around the streets leading up to East Gate, which led out towards the earlier heart of Southampton and its very first church, St. Mary's. Beyond the northern walls lay the suburb of Above Bar, stretching through the fields and common land towards the church of St. Mary Magdalene and the remains of the town's lepers' hospital. Southampton drew its piped water from the northern hills, brought in through pipes that met conduit heads along English Street, terminating outside the friary, which had once controlled the water supply. Much of medieval Southampton still survives today. The western stretch of the town walls is intact and retains many of the original medieval features. One of the merchant houses on French Street is preserved by the English Heritage Organisation. The Tudor house and garden can be visited on Bugle Street, and the Cloth Hall, originally on St. Michael's Square, was dismantled and rebuilt adjacent to West Gate and is now open to visitors as the Tudor Merchants' Hall. Several of the taverns seen in this 1500 reconstruction remain, albeit significantly altered over the centuries.